go to bed.
But you said I can watch...
No, that was before you lied to me and poisoned the cat.
That broccoli was poisonous?
No, of course the broccoli wasn't poisonous.
This is Mars Needs Mom, Disney's biggest box office flop up until 2011.
Your mother would be proud of you.
And just by watching a few clips, you can already tell why it was never going to work.
Respectfully disagree with you completely.
And this is Robert Zemeckis, the producer of the film, and the director behind movies you've definitely seen. But there was one film he directed that promised to change cinema forever.
Hey you, yeah you. Do you know what kind of train this is? Huh? Train, do you know what kind of train this is? Well, do ya?
Where a single actor could play 5 different characters.
You're the little boy in that clip.
Yes, I was the little boy in that clip. And the other guy play, well, that would make 3 other roles.
And back then, everyone kept asking the same question.
What's going to be the impact in terms of the future of filmmaking? Because people are, in some cases, comparing this to the advent of sound.
And for a moment, it really felt like we were on the edge of a new era.
What this is going to allow is directors, they're going to be unbridled as far, if they can imagine it, they can make it happen.
And it did change cinema, just
Where?
not in the way they expected.
Are you the one they call Beowulf?
This style of filmmaking, I have to say, just leaves me cold the way Zemeckis is using it. Now, it is better than Polar Express in some ways. You know, you get a slightly less creepy look around the eyes and the mouth, but I mean, look, all this money and all this technology and...
What you're hearing right now is a critique of Beowulf.
I'm Beowulf. I'm here to kill your monster.
Which was the second movie made with this technology after the Polar Express, and it was an attempt to prove that it could be used for serious, mature filmmaking.
This, I promise.
And it is sexy. And it is visually going to be not just pretty to watch, but really beautiful and cool to watch.
And also to show that a 50-year-old man could play a heroic Norse warrior without any issues.
I may not return. Your ancestral sword might be lost with me.
And that was followed by the third of these Zemeckis films, A Christmas Carols, which ended up being the last one, after Disney canceled his Yellow Submarine remake in 2012.
You and Blue Amine have been sighted in the vicinity of this theatre. There's only one way to go out.
How's that?
Singing!
Partly because the faces looked kind of creepy, but also because of the failure of Mars Needs Moms, a film he produced using the same technology that had clearly hit its limit. And when I think about this case, I can't help but wonder why one of the most prolific directors of his generation walked away from everything to spend 10 years trying to reinvent cinema. And more importantly, why didn't it work? Well, believe it or not, this whole story actually starts in a pretty unexpected place.
Is it true that you had the Michael J. Fox role in Back to the Future?
What? You're George McFly. Yeah, who are you?
Yes, it is. What happened?
Back in '84, Robert Zemeckis had to swap out Eric Stoltz for Michael J. Fox, even though half the film was already in the can.
And I mean, it was the worst thing and the most terrible thing that I ever had to do in my life, and I mean, we both were devastated by it.
So what happened was the director fired me.
Why?
He didn't like my work.
You see, I don't think it's a coincidence that a case this unusual, reshooting an entire blockbuster with a different actor and turning it into a huge success, happened with Zemeckis in charge, because he's a director obsessed with control.
I just love the idea that I could do the cinema part without any restriction.
And if you think about it, up until that point in his career, Zemeckis had been taking bold, innovative risks with every single film he made, and every one of them had paid off, which is why they genuinely believed they were about to revolutionize cinema when Tom Hanks acquired the rights to the Polar Express, and they ran the screen test that changed everything. And today I want to talk about that, and about how it failed. But before we get into it, there's something I want to tell you, because did you know most of us clock in around 6.5 hours of screen time every single day? But the surprising part is that it rarely turns into real progress, because you end up searching for things, summarizing stuff, and reading articles you don't even know are worth your time. Or at least, that's how it was for me, until I started using Opera, a browser that's been rebuilt to make your online life smoother and more productive. And unlike most others, it comes with a fully integrated, completely free AI you can use for pretty much anything. Because you can literally ask it for whatever you need, from checking the sources of an article you're reading, just to make sure you're not falling for fake news, to breaking down that same article and giving you a clean summary of its key points. All super useful when you're studying or working and need to save time figuring out whether something is worth reading or not. And it even helps with more personal tasks. For example, if you want to carve out a moment in your week to go to the movies, you can simply ask it to analyze your calendar and find the best time slot for you. And these AI features extend in a lot of different directions. For instance, you can now ask it to summarize a YouTube video for you. And on top of that, you still have all the classic Opera tools that make it such a comfortable comfortable browser to use, like tab islands, which let you group your tabs by theme and expand and collapse as needed.
That's a wonderful thing about this digital process.
Or the video pop-out feature to keep watching your video while you're browsing, and even outside the browser. So, if all of this sounds good and you're ready to upgrade your experience without paying a cent, you can download Opera for free through the link in the description.
So you have always been this guy that found out about something that you could do in a movie.
If there's one thing that defines Zemeckis as a director, it's his obsession with pushing past cinema's physical limits.
I'd like some tea, please.
From one actor playing multiple characters in the same scene, to blending animation with live action.
Well, I drop about, somewhere between 40 and 50 pounds, but it was good to lose it.
To pausing a shoot for a year so an actor could lose weight, or even inventing camera rigs for impossible shots. That's why what he called digital cinema felt to him like a liberation from all those restrictions, and the way he discovered it was almost accidental.
We did 3 different versions of this movie, the 3 different ways you would make it.
It started with a series of simple tests.
I thought we were going to have to do it sort of the way they do the Star Wars movies. The actors in front of green screens, then you put digital computer backgrounds in there.
The first one was basically unworkable, because even though it was an attempt to find a more plastic visual way of bringing the book's illustrations to life, it was almost impossible to make that approach work with a director like Zemeckis, since green screen environments were still pretty primitive at the time.
We did that version of it. Then we did a traditional thing with a set and lighting and dolly rail, and I was an actor and there was a kid in the bed, and that was just like you'd shoot any movie.
The second option wasn't much better, and from an acting and directing standpoint, trying to shoot a kid's movie on a moving train in the snow would have been incredibly difficult, and that's exactly why the third option entered the conversation.
And then the third test of the day was this performance capture version. Right. And what I experienced as an actor that day was, without a doubt, the most free and the most fun and the most...
And at first, it actually seemed like the perfect idea for both sides of the duo. Zemeckis is the kind of filmmaker who always wants to push the camera to its absolute limits, and for Hanks, it was a perfect opportunity to explore entirely new sides of himself as an actor. And for both of them, it meant becoming the face of what was supposed to be a cinematic revolution.
The fact that I played an 8-year-old kid is the best example of the freedom and the possibility that the technology will allow.
The problem is, it didn't quite turn out the way they expected.
What exactly is your persuasion on the big man?
I mean, it's no secret that looking at it now, the result just feels strange, and it falls right into what we now call the uncanny valley.
If I were you, I would think about climbing on board.
And that's exactly what triggers that sense of discomfort.
It speaks.
But what's interesting is that instead of giving up, Zemeckis actually doubled down with Beowulf.
Give him a gold piece and send him home. He has a story to tell.
A film that adapts a classic poem and is, in every possible way, the complete opposite of the Polar Express. If the first one leans into a more traditional animated look, this one goes all in on photorealism. And if the Polar Express is a fantasy about recovering hope,
I believe.
Beowulf is a reflection on legacy that actively tries to distance itself from any preconceived idea you might have about animation.
Keep a memory of me, not as a king or hero, but as a man.
And instead offer something far more mature. And it makes that intention clear from the very first scene, because it opens with a feast where men drink, sing, and do very adult things. And then that celebration is interrupted by a monster that looks like nothing you'd expect. Because it's not a troll or a zombie, but a creature that feels like it crawled straight out of a nightmare. To the point where the film, at times, openly borrows elements from horror cinema, and in that context, the performance capture actually works much better. Not just because the monster's physicality feels real, but because the expressions feel more convincing overall, so you can clearly read Anthony Hopkins as a decaying king, and Beowulf himself comes across as a hero, pulled straight out of an epic myth. The problem, once again, was the reception.
Actually, the film is not that bad, but I'm not sure what it is. This halfway point between animation and live action.
Partly because it was a movie for no one.
I don't understand.
Enter me and give me a sign.
Because it didn't really have a clear target audience at a time when animated films were still heavily stigmatized as being for kids. So adults didn't see it as something made for them, but at the same time found it too violent to take their children to see it. And in a way, that push to make it feel more adult is exactly what makes the experiment interesting, because Zemeckis was no longer trying to impress kids, but to trigger much more visceral reactions, like fear or even desire.
I shall make you the greatest king that ever lived.
Since the hero's main sin is being tempted by a kind of demon.
Forever strong.
And the whole idea is for you, as the viewer, to connect with that feeling. Now, you'd think that after 2 movies with a pretty mixed reception, Zemeckis would have gone back to the kind of films that made him such a huge success in the first place. But instead of that, he decided to try one more time.
Am I in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come?
I don't think Bob ever wants to work in the real world anymore. He just wants to create his own worlds now. And I love his dedication to this craft.
Digital cinema for me is, a giant liberation, and that's why I'm so passionate about it.
This time by doing something that felt like a blend of both approaches. Because once again you have a major star playing multiple characters in a Christmas animated film. But now there's also this clear flirtation with darker gothic undertones.
Why does everything seem to happen to me?
And you can feel it right away since the very first shot of the movie is surprisingly bleak and not very cheerful at all. Which might be because Zemeckis had already realized that this kind of technology works best when the film is aiming for a slightly creepy aesthetic. In this case, drawing heavily from the original book's Dickensian ghost story roots.
Who are you?
When you read the Dickens novel, you realize we've never had the technology to realize what he wrote until now.
And this is also where you can really see why Zemeckis was so obsessed with pushing this technique, especially in the way he uses the camera, because even as far back as Forrest Gump, you could already tell he was trying to push it to the physical limits, like that CGI feather that floats through space in a way that feels very similar to the floating camera moments in his animated films, except doing shots like that in live action would cost millions of dollars for a single setup.
He's like spent 10 years or more of his life, dedicated to the process and to bringing the process along to the point it's at now, which is surpassed where it was on Polar Express, surpassed where it was on Beowulf.
And for a brief moment, it looked like this was finally going to work. But it didn't, because instead, the movie ended up closing a run of films that promised a lot, but earned very little. And all of that ultimately collapsed with the final nail in the coffin. Stop! Mars Needs Moms, which at the time became Disney's biggest financial failure ever. Although, to be fair, the story does end on a slightly more positive note with another film you probably know.
I'm Tintin, by the way. Haddock. Archibald Haddock.
Released that very same year, which used the exact same technology, but with far more success. Still, that wasn't enough to push performance capture films forward as a dominant style, because they continued to look strange at times.
Don't you get it?
And the process of making it look good was extremely expensive, so Disney cancelled Zemeckis' Yellow Submarine remake, and he eventually went back to live-action filmmaking with Flight, although I have to say that since then he hasn't really delivered anything truly essential, and at times he seems to have gotten a bit lost chasing new technological experiments. The good thing is that all that technological development wasn't for nothing, because performance capture itself didn't disappear.
If I was going to do this, I wanted to do it this way, which is with performance capture.
It simply evolved into a tool used for very specific characters, and of course, it was pushed to its absolute limits in films like Avatar. And I think it's worth putting all of this on the table now, looking back at recent film history, just to remember that the next time someone says a new technology is about to be the second coming of sound, maybe we shouldn't panic right away. And I think you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Mrs. Dilber.
And one more thing.
Merry Christmas!